Hey guys, this is Houston Trong from thetrainingedge.org. It is March 21st, doing a quick recap today of today's action and what sets up for tomorrow, March the 22nd, 2019. So, what a day today. So, if you recall, in yesterday's video, I titled it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. Well, we can scratch that last part. Now I think everyone believes that it's the best of times. So, today equities had a major rally. Buyers basically bought it right from the get-go, and all the indices ended up near their highs. And if you were short or if you were flat, then you probably wish that you weren't on the sidelines, or that you were, that you were long, because it was one of those days where they basically bought it all day long. So why do I have this image up? Well, this little blueprint here is what I'm going to be talking about in a little while today, and I'm calling it the blueprint to all-time highs, because there are a few stocks that are showing us potentially what the broader indices can be doing in the next several days, weeks, months, in order to get back to all-time highs. So let's get into the charts now and let's recap some of the day's action. So let's begin on the VIX. We've been on top of that all week because we knew that this is going to be a factor, right? Was volatility going to explode to the upside, or was it going to drop back into the lows again? And as we drew, a couple days ago, we've been just kind of playing around inside this very tight broadening formation. And so, if you recall, we had this situation yesterday where it broke down, but then end of the day as kind of a momentum bullish hammer. And this morning it gapped up, but they basically sold it off right away. It gapped up right into this resistance line that we drew. So off the previous pivot highs here. So we drew that resistance line, a couple days ago. It hit right into that level, and they sold it right away. And they push it right back down to the low that we drew, last week. So funny enough, this broad information is basically really keeping the majority of the price action inside of its range. So the good news is that this is what you kind of want to see if you're going to be a bull or a buyer, because volatility is doing nothing, right? So this is what you want to see. And anyone who's trying to be aggressive and buy volatility, they're getting chopped up here, right? So even if you're shorting volatility, it's not an easy trade because the range is so tight. You're far better off looking for stocks that have, better range than trying to short things like this, even if you even have your bias right. So it's not only important to have your bias correct, but you need to be trading inside some sort of structure that's conducive to range. And when you have this type of tight formation, it's not worth it. You can find way better stocks to be trading than stuff like this. But it's important to know this, right? Because then you understand the guys who are looking at this stuff here, who are trying to go long VIX because they think the world's going to end, they're getting very frustrated here because they're getting chopped up. Even if they're right, they're only right a little bit, right, and that comes back in again. So that's it for the VIX, right? So VIX still at this moment below the weekly open, below the monthly open, and certainly below the quarterly open, right? So you can see on this chart here on the monthly here, far below the quarterly open, and we have one more week to go in this quarter. So quick recap of the SPY. So SPY, Qs, Russell, Dow, all up big today. Qs being the big winner. So yesterday it was a bit of a nasty close for the SPY. It broke down here, and it looked like, if you look at the two-day chart, if you recall, it had actually done a 2-day reversal, inside bar reversal on the 2-day chart. So it had broken below this level here of 281.30. It closed here, close of actually it didn't close right below there, but it closed at 282.40. So it was right, it was close to it. So we needed to see what was going to happen today, and as we saw already, they bought it right from the get-go. So the important thing now is that the week goes, firmly green, and we've finally broken above and closed above this trend line, right? This trend line resistance that's been, holding us back for some time now. We finally closed above it. So the question now is, can we stay above that line, right? So here on the daily chart, as you can see it, we're above it now, but can we stay above that line? So right now, this is the thing. So even though things are going, very well, it's always important to be diligent at these times, because as you may or may not recognize, the worst looking charts always start off as the best looking charts. So when it looks like you're going to all-time highs and it looks like everything is going to plan, that's when things can unravel very quickly, because then usually if you're feeling that way, then the majority of other market participants are feeling the same way. So here's a situation now where we need to watch out here, because this is a momentum candle. When you have an outside bar like this going into highs at the top of the range, inside Bollinger Bands, it has to keep going, right? So the good news here is that for the 4 hour, you have a bit of space here. So the expectation is that it keeps going. But again, you have to keep going, otherwise you're going to pull back, and it won't be catastrophic of a pullback, but it could possibly, easily pull back into the range here again. And if you're a week long, I mean, you're getting long at the edges, you're probably going to get stopped out if it pulls back too far. So that's the issue if you're taking that kind of setup where you're buying a breakout. It just has to keep going. You can't wait for it to come back in, because it's kind of probably retrace deeper than you want it to. So on the weekly, right, it's going to be, unless things change dramatically tomorrow, we're probably going to have a green week. And this means that in order for the bears to really take control next week, they have to break the low of this bar, which is going to be tough. And right now we have a nice green month. So yeah, it looks like we're going to ride out the rest of the month green with 1 week left, unless something changes dramatically next week. So we can continue. We can expect that the trend should continue. That's the expectation from the majority of participants. Now Qs, this is a monster day for the Qs. Ends near the highs, up close to 1.6%, and you can just see from the get-go they buy it and they don't look back. Right. So if you're short in this sequence here somewhere, you're getting squeezed. And if you were not long already, then you were chasing, right? Because now you're just buying the rocket fuel. And it goes outside day. We talked about yesterday. How is it going to get outside this outside day? Because you're going to open right in the middle of the range, right? Is it going to go down? Is it going to go up? Or is it going to stay in the middle? And today they bought it and they shot it right up. So it's momentum to the upside, right? So you want to see that momentum continue. Russell, the same powerful looking chart, except this one here is still in a bit of a range, right? So if we look at it on the weekly chart, you're still inside the previous week's range. So tomorrow we have an interesting opportunity here, because we have an outside-inside pattern on the 4 hour chart. So if we can break to the upside and resolve this 4 hour consolidation to the upside, maybe that breaks that weekly high again, last week's high, right? And we get some more continuation to the upside, because that would trigger the inside weekly candle again to go inside week and up, and that would possibly give us more continuation. So watch out for the Russell tomorrow. That could be a leading indicator about price action. The only thing again is that the Russell's still inside month with another week to go, but right now it's still inside month. Okay, and Dow was the other one that went outside day today. So the Dow, they just bought it right from the get-go. What can you say about that? It's like they open the gap down and they just buy it from the bottom to the top, and so yeah, it's basically an outside day. Once again, what happens tomorrow? When you have outside days like this, the question always has to be, what's going to happen tomorrow? Because he has such a big range, what's going to be the next candle? Because as we know, with big ranges, the problem is that sometimes you can just go right back in the range and do nothing. Because right now the Dow is inside month. But the clues are that we're going to go higher, right? So those are the clues. So here's some stuff to be thinking about. EM, which tracks the Asian markets, had a phenomenal day today. Sorry, not today, but it's had a really good setup today, which sets up potentially nice for tomorrow. So it's pretty much a flat day for it, but it did come out of the red. So the previous day it had an outside bar. So like we were talking about just a few moments ago. What do you do after an outside bar, right? You only have three choices. Well, for the most part, three choices. You gotta take out one side of the range, the top side, the bottom side, or stay in the middle. Or you could take out either side of the range and come back in again. That's obviously the fourth and fifth option. But inside this situation here, you have an outside-inside situation now, and if the EM can break to the upside here, look, the 4 hour chart already triggered, then you can have consolidate and you can have additional gains potentially coming up here with Asian stocks, and so that would be very bullish, because a lot of Asian stocks have been hammered, and if we get a broader rally in some of these Asian names, then we can certainly see more participation out there. Case in point is something like JD, right? So JD.com. Today, inside bar reversal on the daily chart. So on the daily chart, yesterday it was ended red, and it broke to the downside on these inside bars. But today they bought it back, so inside bar reversal. It traps anyone who got short there and may have stopped them out. It also took out the week too, so the weekly high. So now you have inside week and up. The week high is 28.71. It closed at 28.76 for a nice 2.4% gain today. So, things like JD are setting up to go higher here and, possibly gap fill some of these areas up top here, which are not far away now. Another, item here that I think we need to watch is something like Microsoft. So this is what I really consider a possible blueprint for markets making all-time highs. So today, Microsoft, if you go back now, look at that chart at the bottom right-hand corner, Microsoft, all-time highs. Okay, so up 2.5% today. And it's all on the, if you take a look at it, this sequence here is very, very interesting. So if you recall, in October, we had that really rough sell-off that started in October, and Microsoft, basically shed, if we measure here, from peak to trough, so the peak of October to the trough in December, it shed about 20%. So from peak to trough, it shed 20%. Since then, it's recouped that. So from the trough to the peak, the current peak, it's now gained. Oops, wrong tool there. I'm just drawing that in again. So if I draw that in properly, so approximation, not exact because I'm not drawing it perfectly, but approximately from the trough to peak, it's now gained over 28%. Okay, so that's the kind of move it's been in Microsoft, and this lays the broad print or the blueprint for how the market can make all-time highs, get back to all-time highs. Because look what happened to Microsoft: outside bar and down. Okay, then you have an outside bar that rips it down to the lows, followed by an inside bar that breaks back to the upside, that then goes after these pivots to get back to all-time highs. That's what it's going to take for the indices to crawl their way back to all-time highs. If we look at something like SPY, then it's setting up very, very similarly, right? So we have, a big bar to the downside, inside bar break to the downside. Now that goes inside bar. If it breaks to the upside, it traps these guys, takes out that pivot, and all it needs to do now is take out that pivot, and you're back to all-time highs. You can see the same with most of the other indices. So if you take a look at, let's say, the Russell first, very quickly. So here we go. Inside, break to the downside. Inside bar again, break to the downside. Inside bar reversal, right? There's your inside bar. Reverses back to the upside again because it traps these guys who thought it was going to go inside and down. Instead, it goes inside and up, takes out their stop. This took out their stop. And now, next month, if we can go inside bar and up on that, if it remains an inside bar, then we go after these pivots there and we get back to the highs. Dow, same thing. Even though we have all that Boeing news coming out, if things can, if the news can slow down, that negative news flow can slow down. Look what we see here. This looks a lot like the Microsoft chart. Okay, so outside down, outside bar, inside bar. So there's your outside inside pattern to the downside. Then you go inside bar. We get the inside bar reversal. Takes out that guy's high and he stops there. Got triggered. Now it's going after that pivot there. All right. So the next pivot here is 262.97, and then we're back to all-time highs. So all it needs to do here, if we get an inside month to the upside break, then we're going to have the momentum guys in the Dow stocks, and that could possibly test these all-time highs. So if we look at Microsoft, and Microsoft is, a Dow component, that's what, could portend for the broader averages if they follow Microsoft's lead. Okay? So enough soapboxing about that. Just a couple more things to cover off here that I thought were interesting. So, on days like this, there's so much stuff to play in the trade. It's important not to chase stuff, right? Because you see really, really big names, and it's easy to feel bad that you miss out on certain trades. The key, though, is not to chase. The key is to focus on your process and to figure out how not to miss subsequent days like this, right? So, you don't want to get to the habit now of, let's say tomorrow, trying to reproduce what you couldn't do today. Because tomorrow's market may or may not be the same as today's market. So you don't want to take the same blueprint or game plan that you try to implement today and you failed to into tomorrow's session, because tomorrow's a different day. So do your best to examine your process and see, okay, if I wanted to trade differently on days like this, what do I need to have in my process to help me identify these types of days, and how do I want to act respectively, right? And so that has to be the thought process versus being outcome driven and saying, oh, I want to make more money on days like this. That's outcome focused. That tells nothing about what you're going to do to be able to capitalize on days like this. Because either, number one, you already had to be in some of the names that were moving today, So I had bought a couple, actually 2-3 names prior to today's session, anticipating something like this because the trend was up. And or you have to be ready to take intraday trades and recognize this. If it starts moving, you're gonna have to actively manage them. So I'll give you an example of a trade that I like. So I took on, let's see, TWLO yesterday, and here's a great example of the kind of setups that I like to do. So yesterday, just give some color, right? So yesterday was an outside day, prior day, inside day. But look at the sequence: inside, outside, inside, outside. So we talked about this in yesterday's video. A bunch of people are getting chopped up here, right? They're getting chopped up before the real move happens, and today's the real move, right? So today was up, 3.83%, and it went to all-time highs. So TWLO all-time highs today, and I got in that sequence here. So yesterday on this inside bar reversal, I got long here, and today I was adding to the trade because now I knew I was right? So you put on your first position there on that level, or however you want to do it. So I'm just explaining how I leg into things. You get into that level, and now you once the trade confirms itself, then you have the ability to add to the trade. Okay. Now something to look out for is and today I was actually a fan of shorting one stock. That was Cron, because I like to look for stocks on days like this. Obviously, you want to chase the ones that are moving, like the AMDs and the Microns of the world, which are really moving today. And that was good money if you're that kind of trader who likes to chase those big momentum stocks. Or you can go after a laggard like Kronos. Kronos is a real laggard here. Now, what's a stock doing being red on a green day like this? So if the stock that you like can't get out of its own way, then these are the stocks that are set up really nicely for short sells. And on Kronos, look at the 4-hour chart. Outside, inside, outside, inside. People are getting killed in here. They're getting chopped up. And finally, the break to the downside. So we get that break to the downside, and then all day you can be a seller. You can be a seller in any pullback. Right? So any pullback you get on Kronos, that's an opportunity to sell because it closes right at the lows. The market's going to highs. It's closing to the highs. This stock keeps making new lows. So that if you own Kronos, you're pulling your hair out. So these are the kind of stocks you want to be shorting on days like this, because from a psychological perspective, this is not the kind of stock you want to be long in. In fact, you want to be the opposite. And the guys who are long, unfortunately, they're not having a good day. So one more stock to look at tomorrow. We've been pointing out energy stocks. So here's a potential name that's interesting. Look at we talked about XOP already. That's obviously it's been another good day for XOP, moving quite nicely. It's, again, monthly up, weekend up, right? It's ending up green today. It's a small day relatively, right, compared to the day before when it had a close to 3% day, but it sets up nicely some of the names, some of the energy names. Look at Halliburton, perhaps for tomorrow, right? So Halliburton here, inside weekend up, outside inside day, just consolidating today. Didn't really go down, consolidated nicely. And look on the 4-hour chart, we have inside pattern. So consolidation for a full day. This thing breaks out now. We can anticipate this getting back to the 30.89 level and turning the month green again. Okay, so keep your eye out for that one there, and let's see how it plays out. All right. Have a good evening and have a great trading day tomorrow. Hope you have a good Friday session. Happy trading.